Hey everybody, Chris here, and we're taking a small break from the Forgotten Books of the Bible series just to get caught up on some recording and content for all of you guys. But don't worry, we aren't leaving you with nothing to listen to. We decided that we would release one of our very first YouTube series that we recorded back in 2020 called the Conviction series, where we essentially went through the book of James, chapter by chapter, and talked about what convicted us from it. The audio quality isn't that great on some of the episodes, but we really thought that the content was good enough to overlook some of the bad audio quality we had when we first started up. So we really hope you all enjoy this short series and allow it to do some convicting in your life as well. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Conviction series. I'm Chris, and this is
Murdoch.
And we're here with the conviction in James chapter 3.
I wasn't sure if you're going to let me say my own name this time. That's why I had that pause.
Well, I wasn't, and then I thought I should.
Yeah.
So I was like, I should be nice enough to let Murdoch say his own name. So there you go. You're Murdoch.
I am.
Chapter 3.
Let's get into it.
What a treat, huh? I'm going to start at the end.
All right. A bit of Tarantino, right?
Just a little bit. But I'm trying to figure out where, because I think 13 through 17, the entirety of those verses.
It's kind of a chunk, yeah.
Yeah. It almost felt to me when I read these like I'm in a fight. And I got my hands up, and then I got hit here, so I went to block there, and then I got hit here, so I brought it back up, and then they hit me here. Like no matter where I was blocking, the other part was getting hit of my body. So this was kind of a real ouch for me. So, who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show you it by his good life, by deeds done in humility that come from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly and unspiritual, of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. And I'm just going to stop there for right now because I got tired of getting hit. But to me, this was hard because there was this part in here that says, harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart. And everyone gets hurt by something or someone at some time. And then there's bitterness inside of us. Or even looking at someone who has something that I want. I want to tell myself, no, it's okay that they have that and I don't, but there's this envy to it. Like if someone got a promotion that I really, really wanted and they got it, how do you go up to someone and say, congratulations, you got the job and I didn't? And then I could like say, no, I'm past it, but that harboring, maybe just a little bit inside of me still holds on to it. And the same thing with selfish ambition, because we've actually talked about this privately together, that's something that I feel like I struggle with this for God's glory, but I also want to be recognized for God's glory, but I want the attention. And then it's what James does best, right? But anyone who has this kind of wisdom in quotation marks, who thinks this way, it's unspiritual and of the devil. So now James just told me I'm not spiritual and I am the devil. So
let me give you what mine says. Earthly, unspiritual, demonic. That's coming from the English Standard Version.
So I'm a demon. There we go.
No, just your wisdom is a bit demonic. Yeah, it was interesting hearing that, and I was wondering what your take on it was going to be, because whereas you're feeling like, oh man, I'm getting hit by this, I was kind of not as hit by this section. It gave me a lot of consideration going through this chapter, because I felt like, no, it's the conviction series, and I'm learning here, so it's just like, this has got to convict me more than it is right now. So I was trying to think, like, am I just not thinking accurately of myself? Am I not paying attention to something? So I was wanting to hear where you were coming from, that maybe you would be able to properly shine the spotlight, and I would be like, oh, you know what, I agree with that.
But you didn't.
Not fully, but then I think that that's fine, because it's like, you know what? We all do have our separate things that we do kind of like gets in there more. And it's like, there's definitely things in here that grab me a bit, but whereas other parts of James really hit me, this one's just like, you know what? I feel like maybe more so in my past, I've learned through some of it. Maybe I just wasn't as predisposed to some of it to begin with.
I mean, personally, there's just so much inside of here that he says, he starts off with, let him show it by his good life and by deeds done in humility. And then there's the do not boast about it. So don't boast about it or deny it. Recognize this as part of your life, but don't boast about it. And I even thought about the good deeds and what people do, that if we boast about it, does it negate what we just did? Does it take away that good deed from giving it to God and, just doing it because you did it for God's glory? And then you go around and tell people about what you did, and now it's become about my glory.
And that's where Jesus talks about it, right? He's like, hey, see all them that are parading what they're doing? They got their glory. They got their glory from men. Like, whatever you do in secret, God sees what's done in secret, and he'll reward you for those things. But then I also think that there's a balance, because as teachers or as, just people who are leading other people, at a point you need to lead by example or be able to, speak on things. Because sometimes I struggle with that. It's how much do I share? Being aware of that concept of, am I sharing this so that people will think differently of me? Is it giving God the glory? At times is it almost like, am I fine to lose out on the God glory for this one? It's like, okay, God, if that one doesn't count in heaven because I'm sharing it, hopefully this is just useful to them. In my weird ways of thinking about things and trying to yeah, my brain can get kind of complicated sometimes, but I hear you. Yeah, as far as boasting about things, jealousy and selfish ambition, I know that for me, how that played out, especially more so when I was first coming back into the church, and then I was kind of given a leadership role pretty quick just because I was really all about it and just couldn't get enough and, moved up in that way, is that I really, really wanted to see what I was reading in the Bible happen in the world. But then I also really, really wanted to be the person that was making that happen. I was the one bringing in the message, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's where some of it is for me, but I'm not entirely sure that that's even what this part of the passage is saying. Mm-hmm. When I kind of relate my ambition, even within Christianity, there is that, okay, is it for my glory or for God's? I want to see revival, but I really wouldn't mind being the preacher who's preaching that revival, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's that, and then 16 is for where you have envy, selfish ambition. There you find disorder in every evil practice. And just kind of, again, that reminder, envy, selfish ambition, what are you doing things for? Why are you doing it? Whose glory is it going to? And I think there is a balance between it. There has to be a legitimate balance between having a holy ambition, something that is holy and I want to do it for the service of God. You've put this burden in my heart, and no matter what else I did in life, it doesn't fulfill me. And then once you get there, having the ability to then recognize that everything you're doing is just because God's gifted you and allowed you to do it, and not taking that and internalizing it and making yourself famous for it or trying to get fame for it in any sense. A lot of even to why are we doing this? Why are we sitting here talking to you guys, putting up these videos? What is my motive? Am I just trying to teach people what I struggle with or what I've learned by reading the Bible? Or is it to gain more? And finding that line, because there is definitely a line of God will bless me if I just do what I'm called to do. Throughout the Bible, He will prosper those. And do I achieve prosperity because I want it, or do I achieve prosperity because He's blessed me with it?
Yeah, it brings to mind the well done, good and faithful servant. Mm-hmm. If we just take that humble mindset of a servant, that it's not all of my ambition, I'm just doing what God is asking me to do, and I'm finding contentment in doing what He's asking me to do. If for us as teachers, really, and as pastors to be able to come and do what it is that we're doing, it's okay, if a video has 30 views or if it has 3 million, it's just we've also talked about, instant fame would probably be really bad for both of us. So it's share the video, but yeah. But I think that here where he follows it up in verse 17, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Even that the interpersonal, because we can look at our own pride and our ambitions as kind of in a vacuum, where I'm at. But we're always interacting with other people, right? Me on staff at the church, I'm interacting with other staff members, other ministry leaders, people within those ministries and everything. And it's how am I interacting with those people? Am I looking at what somebody else has, like you're saying, jealousy? Is it first pure? Like you're saying, oh man, I really am happy for that person. Mm-hmm. To be able to get to that point. And I think that that's what's important here to realize is that the goal is to get to that point, to where we can really look at other people and just really, truly have that. That's really cool that they have that. But I think that comes also from it's really cool that I have what I have. When you're content with where you're at, this is kind of weird. I think I heard it from C.K. Lewis. Don't go look it up, because you might run across some stuff. But it was one of the short videos that's shared on Facebook or something. He was talking to his girls, and he basically said, look, the only reason you should ever look in somebody else's bowl is to see if they have enough. If they have more than you, don't get jealous about it, you know? Basically, what this is saying, like, don't be envious, don't have your own ambitions of, oh, if they have that, I need that, whatever. Just, hey, you know what? Are you good? Can I help you? And don't, well, you should be helping me for it, you know, all of that stuff. Just look at what we have and look at what we can do. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is really cool. That's a good way to actually look at all of this, because if we're summing up like what we've talked about before, James is talking about help those people in need. And then real wisdom comes in when you're looking at your ambitions and looking at people around you and saying, do they have enough? Can I help you instead? There's two kinds of wisdom. There's wisdom that's all about me, my life, and how I can gain, which is a world wisdom, right? That's the truth, right? How can you jump
demonic?
And this demonic. How can I jump the ladder ahead of everybody, and no matter how I do it, if I'm crushing people, who cares? I get what I want because I wanted it. And then there's the wisdom that comes from heaven, and it's pure. How can I help others? And mine is peace loving. How can I bring peace and love into things? It's considerate. I am putting other people first, submissive. Maybe I don't get this, and that's okay because I have what I have. I really like that point you made. Full of mercy, good fruit, impartial, sincere, all these things. At the end of it, he says, you have this wisdom, you live this way, it produces a harvest. And I kind of think of it, again, kind of going back to what I said, if we live this way, just be the servant and allow God to bless us, we reap that harvest. The one thing that I've always told myself is that I never want more than what I need. You know, God, never give me beyond, because I always fear myself. I legitimately have a fear of that first wisdom in myself. But if you could give me what I need and I could be content with where I'm at and what I have, then anything else I'll learn to also accept it as contentment. It's always there. And I feel like that's what he's done. Like, for the most part, he's giving me just the things I need. I have a beautiful wife. I have 2 wonderful children. I have a home. I have my chickens. I have my Prius. Like, I have the things that, probably not all those things I need, but the essential things. And even with some stuff that me and my wife were talking about, like coming up in the future financially, we've come to this conclusion in the 12 years we've been married that God's always taking care of us. Our bank accounts never went to like zero. And even sometimes in the midst of like, how are we going to be able to do this? The storehouse has gotten fuller. You know what I'm saying? Like how are we saving this much money? I don't know. God's doing it. But it's because I think motives, intentions, allowing God to just bless instead of pursuing what the world has to offer and chasing the dream. But that's all. I don't want to talk about this anymore because it hurts too much. So I'm going to let you go to your conviction.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like last time. I feel like there's just a couple of main chunks going on, whereas that first chapter hit a lot of different things. So since it's Tarantino, you start at the end, we're going to bring it right up to the beginning. And verse 1, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. I was like, oh, great. That's what I am. I am a teacher of this word. Like, I'm going to be judged with greater strictness.
Yep.
Like, well, couldn't get any plainer than that. And for me, I don't need to know, like, well, how am I getting judged? What's the consequences of it? Like, just hearing that alone, like, okay, I get it. Like, I don't need to know what's on the other side of it. I just know that I definitely need to be aware of what I'm doing. And especially as I've gone through this Christian life, you know, since being a kid, being raised in the church, different things, going overseas, and just YouTube opening up and hearing all of these different preachers and teachers and books and everything. It's just like, there are a lot of people teaching things that I think are very obviously wrong and against what Jesus would be teaching. Like, I feel like these people would kick Jesus out of their church if he came and tried to preach. And it's like, oh man, I need to be really careful with my words. And as I was reading through this, I always kind of took that verse by itself and then moved into the next verses as if they weren't connected. Because the next verses talks about our tongue, right?
Yeah.
It says, "For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone doesn't stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they're so large and are driven by strong winds, they're guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things." Right? And I always kind of separated those two. They're like, oh, don't be a teacher. Also, everybody else pay attention to the words that you use, because your tongue is like set on fire and you can set everything, right? Maybe we didn't get to that fire part yet. But then as I was reading it this time and really connecting those, that as a teacher, you are the tongue, you know? And you're guiding all of those people.
Mm.
And that's a scary thing, because if you consider a ship and a pilot on the ship, that better be a good pilot, because you need to be aware of the storms. Your job is to get those people, that cargo, that ship, to the port safely. So when I consider myself as a teacher, it's like my job is to shepherd these people and teach them safely as they navigate life or come to me, or whatever that thing is that I am the tongue. Like, I need to be bridled. It's like I am guiding the body, so to speak, in that way. And it's like, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's actually something oddly enough, when I was reading this morning, I read something about that, and it hit me too that way. Like, it never before I would read it, yes, separated the two verses.
Yeah.
And even in what I have like lined up in my Bible, like I stop at "we all stumble," because I'm like, okay, I get that, don't all presume to be teachers because we all stumble. And then it goes into the whole tongue thing and like, watch what you say, right? That would be the rest of the verses from here on to verse 12. We could go into like, hey, as people, we need to watch what we say. Don't say this, don't say that. Your tongue can control your life. It can corrupt you, which is all good. And
I think you can get that from there.
And I'll jump back into that in a minute.
Yes.
But because from last week's video, or the last one, we clearly hear that my tongue is not the best. But for those who want to be teachers, yeah, that was really cool that we guide the body with how we say things. And not even an idea to want to talk about this, but you look at so many people who start cults and their words and how they talk, and they can manipulate people and move them to even do things that they would never even have thought of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes into here, the tongue is also a fire of a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire, and is set on fire. So like, it sets our words can set the whole course of someone else's life. And I will get back to the point of where maybe our words should be more encouraging than discouraging to people. But as preachers and teachers, that, yeah, we can guide people if we're not watching our words carefully. If they don't 100% follow what God says in the word, we can guide them off course.
Howdy, this is Sheriff J. Arkansas, and I'm here to bring order to the Wild West of your flesh with some convicting truths. Watch what you say. If you're speaking something, it's coming from the heart. So don't let what you say be evil or full of deadly poison. Also, get rid of that selfish ambition and learn contentment. See, there are two types of wisdom. Demonic wisdom that only wants what it wants and doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. And heavenly wisdom that is pure and wants what God wants for them. Don't have demonic wisdom. This has been Sheriff J. Arkansas, and you've just been convicted.
And then, yes, you are being judged more strictly because of that, and harsher, because maybe some people, not purposefully, but those purposefully decided to teach something that wasn't 100% biblical and can stand on God's word. And that's scary. It's also scary to the fact that, like, there are so many people who are smooth talkers and that they can get their way with how they say things and just lead a group of people away. So it's almost, to me, now that I'm looking at it, James is saying, for those of you who want to presume to be teachers, you're going to get judged a little harsher. And then for us who are teachers, watch out for those people so that they don't lead others astray.
Yeah, and when we're looking at the mouth being able to guide and to set things on fire, it's like, it's not just within the church. I mean, look at anything that happens throughout human history. You generally have one guy or gal like standing up and speaking, and it's just like a crowd. And just like they follow that, and it's so much, personality or leader driven. That's so much about that person's message, and it can be a great thing. Throughout history, amazingly great things have happened, but it can also be an absolutely horrible thing. And it really is a thing of just like, by our words, great effect comes from that. It's such a small thing. It's just like one person leading tens of millions of people, like, on some of these movements, and it's just like, well, is that going to go good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
And the responsibility that lays there. And throughout history, we can look by bringing it back into the church at different times where the Bible hasn't really been taught correctly, and different things have been brought to the forefront, and different desires have come in, power, money, whatever kinds of things. I really do think that there is a judgment to those people who taught in those ways, that person was looking to you for answers, and that's the answer you gave them. So, again, this is the personal conviction. I can look at all of history and look at all this stuff, but it's like, for me, whenever I'm talking with somebody, it's very much, I think I've said it in the other videos, James was one of the first books that I really read when I came back into the church and really got serious. And I read that, and I wasn't a teacher yet, and I was like, oh, okay, that's not good. And then very quickly I became a teacher. I was like, oh no, like, I'm just part of that now. But it's always been on my mind.
Yeah. Now let's take it from a more person standpoint, like a normal, like not someone who's a teacher. Because I think that also needs to be addressed in it. And that whole chunk from there to 12 is just, there's so much in there. But really, I think from all of it, James is just telling us, watch what we say. Watch what we say to other people, kind of not even in the teaching sense, but in the everyday sense. And for me, the conviction fell probably a little harder on that side also, because I feel like when I go up to teach and speak, I stay so close to like what the Bible says that I don't wander off much unless I have an illustration that may take me in a whole crazy direction, which tends to happen sometimes.
Yes.
But I struggle more with the everyday encouraging, even to like my own family, my children. Like, I feel like trying to encourage someone is so hard for me. And it's not because I don't feel like I was ever like not encouraged. It's not one of those like mental things that like a child, like I wasn't encouraged or loved enough, so that's why I don't do it. It wasn't that. My parents are great. I was always encouraged in things. I just feel like it has more to do with me personally, because I struggle with the idea of like, if I get too much encouragement, my ego gets crazy. So then I don't want encouragement. And because I don't want encouragement, I don't give encouragement.
I get that. There's that popular thing, the 5 love languages, right? And it's like, for me, getting gifts, like, I don't even think that registered for me as far as getting, it's like, if somebody gives me something, it's like, oh wow, thank you, like, I do appreciate that. If you hadn't gotten me that, I don't think that you don't love me any more or less, you know what I mean? Just like, give. But because I view gifts that way, I'm not really aware, just like, oh, I should really be giving gifts to people because other people like that. So I'm sorry to my wife and like right? And it really takes a lot of mental energies to be aware about where other people are at. So yeah, with our words and being aware, okay, what is the function of my tongue and of my words according to Scripture? Like, we're told, hey, speak encouragement to one another, speak in psalms and like lovingly and all of this stuff, and that's how you should be speaking to one another. And it's like, okay, I guess it doesn't matter where I naturally would be with it or what I think about what I should be. God's telling me to do it. So I need to find the importance there and then also follow through on that.
Yeah, to encourage people so that way we're not tearing them down or destroying them or like leading them astray. And then there's also I think the other end of it is now watch what you say, because people are listening to what you say. Like for me, I definitely, as a teenager growing up, had a swearing problem like no other. Bad, like really bad. And I went to church. And I like where he says, out of the mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same springs? And to me, it's basically, that's what I was trying to do with that life of like saying inappropriate jokes, foul language coming out of my mouth, and then coming to church on Sunday and saying, I love God. They couldn't mix. And eventually one had to give, even to the point where there are words that I use that are supplemental. It's almost like I went from doing drugs to like just smoking now. Like I had to supplement this one isn't as bad, but I'm going to change it. And the real conviction lately has been, ever since last week's video, removing those words also. Because they're just they're not doing anything that's beneficial for anybody. And with how I joke with people, can I not joke just because I have to make fun of somebody? Because that is an area I struggle with. Like, most of the time, and you felt the wrath of it, I'm going to joke with someone, but I'm like, I can make fun of them. And it's so much easier to get that laugh than to get like a just genuine, I said something that was funny and it made people laugh. And I go that route so much quicker, but to actually stop doing that because I can't.
But see, you're saying that you go that route so much quicker, and that's what this is saying. It's just like, hey, we've been able to tame all kinds of animals, right? Every kind of beast and bird, reptile, sea creature, they've been tamed and can be tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It's restless, evil, full of deadly poison. So it's just like, yeah, like it's so much easier to do that, and I can just jump to it. It's like, yes, you can. That's where, not in here, but Scripture tells us, like, we've been given a spirit of self-control. Yeah. And that's where it says being a perfect man. That word perfect, comes into maturity, moving into maturity, moving into self-control, and having all those things that you don't cuss like you used to, and I don't cuss like I used to. I was having this conversation the other day with someone who was just like, sometimes the words come into my mind, but I can't really help that. My brain just like will come up with stuff just from, hearing things. Your brain comes up like, here's the answer to that. But it doesn't really pass from there coming out, because like, oh no, like, okay, you thought that, whatever, here's how I'm going to express where I'm at. So bringing in the self-control on that level. But I think that it really comes to it that, where you brought up does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water, right? So it's kind of like, what is the source? Where is it coming from? It can't be both of the things. Mm-hmm. It's either salt water or fresh water. So what is it? And I think that we fool ourselves, and James says, earlier, hey, don't be double-minded. Cleanse yourself of that thing. And it's been so much more of where I'm seeing kind of sin issues is like, stop treating all of the symptoms and bring it to the root.
Yeah.
Like, if you change the root, you change the fruit. Like, the problem is just like from inside, it's all the salt water. Freshness isn't coming out. Scripture tells us, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if you're speaking something, it's coming from the heart. And when that comes to teaching, when it comes to just general speech and encouragement and whatever, maybe when you're feeling like, oh, I don't want the encouragement, maybe you need the encouragement and stop being scared that it's going to bring the pride, because if you get filled up with the encouragement, you're giving that now, And like for me with my own things, and to be able to give from that place, I just see so much more as like, my problem isn't that I'm cussing. My problem is like I'm not getting filled up with the right thing. Like, so if I'm sitting there watching all of the R-rated movies on Netflix or whatever it is, right, and that's all that's coming in, and I'm not really getting into the word and not speaking to other people that are encouraging, or whatever the music I'm listening to isn't stuff that's filling me up, it's just like, that's all that I've put in there. Mm-hmm. Like, what would I expect to come out? I don't know. That's how I feel with my own self on that.
Totally agree. I don't think I could say anything else different on that, because it is 100% true that what we put in is what comes out, and how we're feeling ourselves. And I think that maybe that's the check that James wants to give us all. It even wraps up like at the end of it with the two wisdoms, right? There's one that's selfish, and then there's the other one that's pure. If we're filling ourselves with what's right, yeah, controlling our tongue is hard. And I even liked at the beginning where it said, the teachers, and then it followed up with, we all stumble. And if anyone says that, then they're a perfect man. I think that was somewhat sarcasm in his tone. That we're all going to make mistakes, but to fill ourselves up more with what God has to offer instead of what the world has to offer, or just something that's a little bit better. Trying to find that enjoyment, but filling God more with our life than allowing ourselves to be so consumed with everything that's out there. So the other day we just finished watching a show on Netflix that we had binged, and I was sitting there and just jokingly, I was like, well, I don't think in this year cycle I've read my whole Bible through yet, but I've binge watched this show, that show, this show, that show, this show, and then we got to like 7 of them, and some of them were like short seasons, but some of them were like 10 seasons with 20 something episodes a season. And it was that it kind of hit me, and I think it was because I had just read some of this too, that what am I putting inside me, what's coming in that's filling my life more, and where do you find that line of, I guess, even with the wisdom of selfish ambition, that's good, and then taking it to a whole crazy level. Where do you find that line of, I can sit down and enjoy and watch something on TV, but I don't let it overtake me to where that's all I do and I spend less time with God?
Yeah, I think I've shared with you that's where I had stopped playing video games so much, because whatever the program was that I had installed, it would count how many hours I played the video games. It's just right there. And imagine if Netflix told you, here's how many hours you've watched on your account. You would immediately just like, the conviction should hit at that point that, oh no. Especially when I bring it to the point of, am I really going to stand before God and try and come up with some type of excuse that I didn't have the time? And I've had that same conviction just coming, I don't know, we're bringing to this point as far as the conviction, but I kind of forgot what I was going to say.
It happens. I think bringing it back to all of it is that we just sum it up with, what we fill ourselves up with has to be more of God.
Mm-hmm.
Lean more towards the wisdom that He offers and not the wisdom that the world has to offer. It happens, don't worry. It's going to go up there anyways. I'm not going to edit it.
I know you're not. That's why I was striving so hard to pull it back out, and it just wasn't coming. I was like, if I stay quiet for longer, it will be much worse.
It would. But I think we're at the time anyways where we should be wrapping this thing up. James chapter 3, to me personally, a lot more ouches. I think I struggle more with what happens in this chapter than some of the other ones. I think for me personally, ambition is always something that I struggle with, because I don't want to be about me, but I love when things are about me. And I personally really have to learn to control what I say to others. I don't want to go down as a person who was considered a jerk, which I think may happen at this point. I want to, when my life ends, I want to be that person where someone says, he always was encouraging, or he had the words to say that helped me. And again, not from personal satisfaction, but for the idea that I knew that I was doing what God called me to do, and that was just help people.
Yeah, I don't want to have that but.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he was a really good teacher, he was a really good friend, he's really good whatever, but man, he could just really tear somebody down.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that, and my wife has very much helped me in that, because I guess with a lot of my sarcasm and the very dry sarcasm, I would think something would be hilarious. Other people thought that I was just very, very mean. So I worked on that a lot, even before me and you really started linking up. So that's where you're probably like, oh man, you didn't know of working on it.
The problem is I've been working on this for like 38 years. So that's the biggest problem with me. But yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap this one up, is just work on it. The light at the tunnel for this one is that if you lean more towards what God has for you and not on what yourself, that abundance will flow out. And you'll start encouraging people. And it won't be because you're forcing yourself to. It's because it's just natural.
I just end with it, as the scripture kept coming up, and I don't think I said it yet, is that seek first the kingdom and everything else will be added. Now, if you're seeking first the kingdom, if you're seeking first to have that spring be pure that's coming up, if you're seeking first for the wisdom to come out that's pure, if you're seeking into really be like, all right, let me get that relationship with God right and really be spending the time there instead of the other things we can be spending time. It's like, if we seek that first, I think that our tongue will fall in line. I think that our wisdom and the way that we interact will fall in line, because we got to get connected first. Yeah, that's it for what I got.
Yeah, that's it for me. So this is Conviction Series. This is Chapter 3. Next video, we're going to hit Chapter 4. Again, if there's anything in you that you want to add in the comment section on what convicted you in this chapter, go ahead and write it down there, and we'll talk about it some more.
And we have the Facebook group, so if you get in there, you can communicate, you can, talk to us. If maybe you're watching this, you're like, I don't have anyone to talk about this stuff, or I want to get a further opinion on it. Both of us are pretty accessible.
Yeah. So I'm Chris.
Murdoch.
And we'll catch you guys next time.